El Salvador, from ancient warriors to the world's most talked about nation. What if I told you one tiny country survived Spanish conquest, brutal dictatorships, a bloody civil war, some of the world's most dangerous gangs, and then shocked the entire world by becoming one of the safest countries in Latin America? This is the unbelievable story of El Salvador. Intro. Known as the land of volcanoes, El Salvador may be the smallest country in mainland Central America, but its history is anything but small. For thousands of years, warriors, kings, revolutionaries, dictators, and visionaries shaped this land. And to understand today's El Salvador, we need to go back long before the Spanish ever arrived, Long before European ships crossed the Atlantic, El Salvador was home to powerful indigenous civilizations. The Pipil people dominated much of central El Salvador. Their language, culture, and traditions were deeply connected to the Nahua peoples of Mexico. In the east lived the Lenca, while the northern regions were occupied by the Scorti Maya. These societies built cities, traded across Central America, and developed complex cultures. Even today, archaeological discoveries continue to reveal secrets buried beneath layers of volcanic ash for over 1,400 years. But everything would change in the 1500s, the Spanish conquest. In 1524, Spanish conquistador Pedro de Alvarado marched into El Salvador seeking gold, land, and power. What he found was fierce resistance. According to Salvadoran history, the Pipil warriors fought back under the leadership of the legendary King Atlácatl. The Battle of Acajutla became one of the most important confrontations of the conquest. The Spanish were forced to retreat, but only temporarily. In 1525, Alvarado returned with more forces and succeeded in bringing the territory under Spanish control. For nearly 300 years, El Salvador would remain part of the Spanish Empire. Colonial El Salvador. Under Spanish rule, El Salvador became part of the Captaincy General of Guatemala. The economy revolved around agriculture, especially a valuable blue dye called indigo. Indigo made wealthy landowners rich, while many indigenous communities struggled to survive. As the centuries passed, growing resentment towards Spanish rule spread across Central America. Then a political earthquake struck Europe. Napoleon invaded Spain, and the empire began to crack. The fight for independence. On September 15, 1821, Central America declared independence from Spain. One of the leading voices behind Salvadoran independence was José Macias Delgado. However, freedom wasn't as simple as it seemed. El Salvador briefly became part of the Mexican Empire, but Salvadoran leaders feared losing their autonomy. Incredibly, some even explored the possibility of joining the United States. Instead, El Salvador became a member of the Federal Republic of Central America. The union didn't last. In 1841, El Salvador officially emerged as an independent nation, but new problems were already taking shape. The rise of the coffee elite. In the late 1800s, coffee transformed El Salvador. Demand exploded around the world. The nation's wealthy families saw an opportunity. Land that indigenous communities had farmed for generations was taken and converted into massive coffee plantations. Power and wealth became concentrated among a small group known as the 14 families. They controlled enormous amounts of land, business, and political influence. For many Salvadorans, opportunity became increasingly scarce. The tensions created during this era would shape the country's future for generations. Dictatorships and La Matanza. In 1931, General Maximiliano Hernández Martínez seized power. His dictatorship would become one of the most infamous chapters in Salvadoran history. Just 1 year later, a peasant uprising erupted. The government's response was devastating. In an event known as La Matanza, tens of thousands of indigenous people and political opponents were killed. The massacre left deep scars on Salvadoran society. For decades afterward, Military governments ruled through fear, repression, and political control. But eventually, resistance would grow, the Civil War. By the late 1970s, political tensions exploded into full-scale civil war. On one side stood the military-backed government. On the other was the Farabundo Marti National Liberation Front, known as the FMLN. The conflict lasted more than a decade. Entire villages were caught in the crossfire. Thousands disappeared. Tens of thousands lost their lives. Families fled the country in search of safety. By the time peace arrived in 1992, El Salvador had been forever changed. Gangs, crime, and a new crisis. Peace ended the war, but another crisis was emerging. Powerful criminal gangs expanded throughout the country. Extortion, violence, and murder became everyday realities for many Salvadorans. For years, El Salvador earned a reputation as one of the most dangerous places on earth. Millions of Salvadorans living abroad continued sending money home, helping support families and the national economy. Many wondered if the country would ever escape the cycle of violence. In 2019, a political outsider named Nayib Bukele won the presidency. He promised to challenge the traditional political system. His administration launched aggressive anti-gang operations. Tens of thousands of suspected gang members were arrested. Supporters argued the strategy dramatically improved public safety. Critics raised concerns about civil liberties and due process. Regardless of opinion, the impact was impossible to ignore. Homicide rates fell dramatically, and the world's attention turned toward El Salvador. El Salvador today. Today, El Salvador stands at a crossroads. It is a country with an ancient past and an uncertain future. A nation that survived conquest, dictatorship, civil war, economic hardship, and gang violence. Yet despite every challenge, the Salvadoran people endured. And perhaps that is the true story of El Salvador. Not just the story of a country, but the story of resilience. If you enjoyed learning about the history of El Salvador, hit the like button and subscribe. And if you're Salvadoran, tell me in the comments. What part of our country's history do you think the world should know more about? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.